The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of ECTV or any entities they represent.
This week on Voice of the People, Community Access, our guest is Lee Morgan.
Hello everybody, Lee Morgan one more time. This issue isn't the Home Rule Charter, it's the closure of public schools in Scranton. I've got the article here from the Scranton Times. I hope that there would have been more in the paper in regards to closures and what was actually taking place in the district. And I'm not surprised. We're going to close John Adams in Pine Brook, William Prescott in the Hill section, Charles Sumner in West Side, Robert Morris, they're going to do something with that. McNicholas Plaza, we're going to close. And you have to ask yourself, how can we educate children in an environment like that? Now, I had an opportunity to talk to the recovery coordinator when she first arrived here, sent here by the governor. For all the people that don't understand this or who haven't watched a council meeting, as I've explained to the council, Pennsylvania's Constitution calls on the state of Pennsylvania to fund public education in the state. Well, what's happened in the last 30 years is the most atrocious abuse of the residents of the city of Scranton, because we went under Act 47 in regards to the city, and the city was continually looted after we went into Act 47. Building parking garages the city couldn't afford to build, just a host of things that I really don't care to go over again at this time, because we're talking about a different issue at this point. But before the construction of the new school in Scranton, there were debates about closing East Scranton Intermediate and John Adams. At that time, I was involved in the opposition to the construction of the new school because it was in the wrong place. It was being built at the wrong time by a district that couldn't afford to build that project without bankrupting itself, even though at that time the city school district was financially challenged, and that the way forward for the city was to take Scranton Central and refurbish it and maintain it. Now, we may not have kept two high schools, but we would have kept East Intermediate, and we would have had more balance in the Scranton School District. But as things turned out, the only thing that was saved here was John Adams. I went to the school as a child. Behind the cameraman, we had a set of monkey bars and some hopscotch, and we had a pool here, about 4 foot deep, and it was the bedrock of the community. I mean, the real rock of this whole community, for blocks in each direction. And now, the city is talking about, working to try to enhance Pine Brook with grant money and, stabilize it like they allegedly did in Southside. Well, if you close the school, you destabilize everything here. And when you look at education, you have to be honest with yourself. America's on the bottom. So, over the course of the last 30 years, nothing has changed because there's nothing in these buildings. All the supplies and everything that should be here, in my opinion, it wasn't here in 2010 because I ran first to be a state representative and I talked about it. Okay, and I talked to teachers about what was taking place in the Scranton School District, and it wasn't pretty. Now, the way forward is very simple. The people either have to stand up for once and demand that these schools stay open, and that the governor in Harrisburg, Wolf, fund these schools, because the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is responsible for education and the education of the children here. I'm tired of hearing about children being minorities or having to deal with poverty, okay? Because that's not a reason why children aren't educated, okay? Children aren't educated because we aren't investing in them. And in order to invest in these children, we have to have a situation where the legislators in Harrisburg You know, you can ask yourself, where's Marty Flynn, the state senator? You know, Mr. Welby, I have some faith in him because he really ran the show behind the scenes for Marty Flynn when he was the state representative. Don't kid yourself, okay? But he's only going to be there for a couple more months. But these state representatives, not just here, but throughout the Commonwealth, should be making sure that the school children in Pennsylvania receive an education. And we can talk all we want to about how the city of Scranton was shorted in school funding for a very long time. And the school directors did nothing about it. This city is a bastion of Democrat politics, and that's all it is. The council members are Democrats, the mayor's a Democrat. Even when Jimmy Connors went from being a Democrat to a Republican, he was still a Democrat, okay? The school board members, Democrats, and you know what? They've created an atmosphere where we can't educate our children. And when you look at what happened during COVID, okay? I mean, we're 25th in the world in education, I think, at this point. Is that a cutting edge education for the students here? I mean, I've got a relative that's helping people who have graduated from Scranton to build up their performance in college so that they can start moving forward. And he said to me that these children haven't learned so many things. They have so many holes in their education that it makes them hard to pursue a college education. So we have to ask ourselves a couple questions here. Where were the parents? Where was the PTA? Where were the teachers? And where were the school board members? Because these children are all victims of those people, okay? And you can call it anything else you want to call it. We have too many parents that are sitting home watching TV, relying on other people to make sure their children are okay. You know, when you listen to civil rights academics, Black Americans talking about what's wrong with this country, they point to education, democratic education, okay? Because that's who's the head of a lot of these democratic cities here, not just here, but others. And they sold all these children out across America. And when you take a look at things going back a very long period of time, they did the same thing. We need to come together in one push. We need to tell the Scranton School Board members to take their solicitor and go to the Lackawanna County Courthouse and file a petition against the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to make up all the shortfalls in Scranton School District, because the state's responsible to educate these children. And by closing the schools that I've mentioned out of the Scranton Times newspaper, what have we done? We're going to leave really large swaths of the city without schools. You're moving children out of their neighborhoods. You're destroying the whole concept of public schools in neighborhoods. I mean, I don't think that's the way we should go. And when you talk about, you know, how many children are in a classroom, I always thought that smaller class size enhanced the educational experience for the student. And now we're talking about 64%. But you know, the children in the Scranton School District at this point have been shorted all across the spectrum. There's no preschool here. Why? Why aren't we taking children in Scranton and enrolling them in a preschool program to enhance their ability to move through the elementary grades and just be lifelong learners and give them a step up? We're just not doing it. And all the political dogma and all the silliness we listen to, you know, the mayor of Scranton was on the Scranton School Board and she walked away from it. Did she say anything about the closure of these schools in regards to the children that she represents in this city? And how about the 3 former school board members on the Scranton School District? What have they said about the closures of these public schools and a lack of state funding? And we've got Mr. Donahue, the council president. He wants to be a state representative. What has he talked about in his campaign to make sure that these schools are funded? And he knows that the state constitution requires the state of Pennsylvania to fund public education. Where's he at? We've got to ask some very serious questions, but the one thing we have to ask is, Where are the parents? Okay, why aren't you standing up for your children? Why aren't we, as a community, going forward to the Scranton School District and putting them on notice that we want them to file a petition in the court to force the Commonwealth to save Scranton schools, bring their funding levels up so that we can educate our children, and build a preschool program in this city so that we can give a head start to the children here in this community. And we need to ask why all the elected officials in Scranton aren't jumping on this opportunity to confront the Commonwealth, okay? This is not a serfdom, okay? These children rely on parents and elected officials to protect their best interest. And I do understand that a lot of people aren't going to like what I have to say. And the other thing I have to say is, why is there a war against cyber schools? Okay, when you listen to people that are educated, they ask, why is there a war on cyber school? Because they enhance the learning experience. The students do much better in cyber school than they do in the public brick and mortar schools, because what we've injected into these schools is politics. You know, why is the NEA director in Ukraine instead of worrying about what's going on in the school systems here? I mean, you know, we've got Mrs. Boland at the Scranton School District in meetings, okay? Why isn't she screaming and yelling about the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania funding these schools? Is she afraid to offend Democratic politicians? Because we need somebody to confront them. Now, I asked to be placed on that board when they had a vacancy, because I knew where I was going to go if I was appointed to one of those seats. I was going downtown to the courthouse, and I wasn't taking the solicitor with me because I don't really need him, because then I'd have standing to go into court and begin to fight to make sure these children are educated. And I don't have any children in this district, okay? And when my children were small, I'm going to be bluntly honest, I parked them in Catholic school for a year until I moved myself and my children out of this city, because I knew at that time, after they built the new school and after you looked at the financial picture of this district and the money that was being placed into these classrooms, that nobody's children should have gone to these schools, because they weren't going to prepare children to be successful. Okay, too many people are playing politics. I mean, you can see it all around you. The mayor just tore down the slide at Naog Park. How much did that cost? Is the bathhouse next? Who's guarding all this grant money? It's all just a free-for-all here. It's all money being thrown all over the place, and our standard of living is collapsing. Our city's a mess. The council's back to borrowing money and creating more authorities. And the average person, like you and I, well, not me, because I'm at the council meetings. You're not there. Like I said, I don't know if you're sitting home watching sitcoms or you're at the pub. But you know what? It's time to stand up. Lee Morgan, one more time, just giving you my opinion. And, you know, don't be afraid to share yours. Okay, 570-604-1212. You can find me on Facebook. Just look for me. I'm not hard to find. Come to a council meeting any Tuesday, and you'll meet me there. Okay, 6:30. Okay, and let's get moving here. And if you want to start saving these schools, show up there. And let's put something together, and let's stand up together as a community, and let's make sure these children are educated. And I don't have any children in this school district. Okay, but I'm concerned about yours, and I'm concerned about my city. Thank you for your time.
The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of ECTV or any entities they represent.